Well, I first heard about the center from Mike Cohen. Cohen and I became friends at the Institute for Advanced Study. Um, we always felt that we were the two least significant people at the Institute, so we kind of bonded together. Um, we used to take a walk in the woods, and Cohen would yell at the main building things like, "Come off it," and things of that kind. And he told me, after he left the Institute, after I left the Institute, about this place. And I was not very impressed at the time because I was in a European mode. I had a 2-year fellowship with the National Science Foundation, and I used it to go to Paris to study in Paris with French, and Murray was there, so it was pretty interesting. And then Cohen told me about this place in one of my trips back to the U.S. And I didn't know much about Aspen, and I was, as I said, Europeanly oriented. But the following year, he persisted. I came out here the second year, and what I thought I would do is I would come out a few weeks in 1 June and see what it was like, and then go back to Europe. So I came out, and I will never forget the first few days here. I had absolutely no idea what to expect. The center was, of course, quite different to what it is now. The 6th Street, as you recall, was not paved, and I think we had only Stranahan at that time, as I believe. And there were a very small number of us. I think at any given time there might have been 20 or 25 of us, or something like that. It was pretty intimate kind of a thing. And I knew nothing about Aspen, absolutely nothing. And my first condo that I lived in was the Glory Hole. And at that time, that part of the east side of Aspen was totally undeveloped. There was a Glory Hole, and then there were fields. And in these fields, there were horses. So I looked out the window, and there were these horses grazing. Oh, Jesus, this is really wonderful. And that night, I was a little disoriented. I went to a bar. I don't know if it exists anymore. It was underneath a wheeler. I forget what it was called, but it was underneath the wheeler. You went downstairs, and it had a huge counter in metal in this bar. I went down. Had a glass of white wine. I think it was a Saturday night. It was pretty lively. And I was sitting drinking my white wine. Along this counter came a woman. She was being propelled from one side or the other along this counter. And my mouth fell open slightly. And a girl next to me was wearing a very pretty girl wearing a cowboy outfit, turned to me and she said, "You must be from the East." And I thought, whoa, this is really terrific. This is the real life here. And then pretty soon it started to snow in June. And I remember I was very impressed by this. I called Sean's secretary at the New Yorker, where I was then writing, and I said, "Mary, guess what? It's snowing here." And she said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Yeah, it's snowing. Snowing's coming down." So I was pretty impressed by that. And as I said, we were a small group. I forget who exactly was here. Cohen was here, and I think Murray was here. Stranahan was around. I think Bakke was around then. And I forget exactly what I did in the way of work. I did something, I think. And then I went back to Geneva, and the following summer, I thought that was a lot of fun. I think I'll do that again. So for a period of about 5 summers or so, I had this modus operandi where I would come out here for the month of June, and then I would go to CERN for the rest of the year, rest of the summer. And that worked out well because there wasn't any problem with getting in the month of June, since it was a very low month, so I wasn't taking anybody's place particularly. And I liked it because there was a lot of snow in the mountains. And I like to take these solitary walks where I'd be kind of the first person up there in the season. I thought that was really a lot of fun. And then we started climbing, and we went out a lot with Randy in those early days. And we had a tradition. We went to the Red Onion after the climbs for beer. And after a few of these, I said, well, I don't really like beer, to tell you the truth. So we got the idea that instead of going for the beer, we'd go to Carl's Pharmacy, where there were these high school girls who served sodas. This is a long, long time ago, a soda bar. And so after these climbs, when we were parched, we'd go there to the Carl's Pharmacy and have these monster ice cream sodas that I like better. And of course, we had a number of adventures in the mountains. We climbed Grizzly Peak, and there was a lightning storm, and everybody's ice axes were buzzing. And we tried to remember what it is they told us to do in terms of when you get in a lightning storm. I think the main advice was don't get hit. That was sort of the main advice. And we climbed quite a few of the sort of standard things around here with Randy. We climbed Star Peak, and that started with this dreadful head wall, which you had to go up. But we later called it the Vuelo del Muerte, the wall of death, sort of steep ice thing. And with crampons, it wasn't a big deal. And I remember Randy found a way around it to the right, which is interesting, and kind of balancing himself on rocks in a rather elegant way. Getting down was interesting. I remember Charlie Summerfield took off from the top of that and sailed down to the bottom in about 6 microseconds. It was pretty scary. Anyway, I did this for about 5 years, and then Pagels, I think, said, would you like to be a trustee, or whatever they called those things? And I said, all right, that sounds good to me. So I was elected, I guess a trustee or a member or whatever it was called in those days. And so I was one of a large number of us. And I got to see more how the center was run. And after a certain time, Peter Kaus became president. And they thought that the housing situation, which was always a nuisance, required that Kaus have an assistant. So I became the pseudo-Kaus. I was the vice president permanently in charge of housing. And my job, since I came early in the summer, was to go over with Sally. We had a list of people and their categories and try to figure out what dislocation they would get and so forth. And there were always problems because the government labs and the industrial labs did or did not give people a dislocation allowance, how much they gave. There was always a certain amount of discontent. And so I dealt with that for a number of summers. And of course, while this was going on, I perceived the fact that as far as our land was concerned, we were on very thin ice. And I have a vivid memory of the following situation. Again, it was early in the summer, and I look out the window, and there's a crew of people digging up what I thought was our front lawn, making a trench out there. So I went out and asked them, well, what are you doing here? And he said, well, the Institute has told us to dig this up because they want to plant a pipe. I thought, well, wait a minute. I mean, they're planting this pipe in our front lawn? What is this? So I went over to see Woody, who was the person who was running these things, and I said, Woody, you're planting this pipe in our front lawn. Woody said, it's not your front lawn. It's our front lawn. And of course, it turned out the Institute owned all that stuff, all the land. We had what was alleged to be a lease in perpetuity. I don't believe anybody ever saw it. Maybe somebody saw it, but I never saw it. And we were also told by our lawyer, Nick McGrath, that a lease in perpetuity was essentially useless, even if he could find it. So as George Strandon used to say, if the Institute felt like it, they could come in with bulldozers and simply take us out. We'd have no recourse in these things. And occasionally there'd be rumors that the Institute was going to give us our land. This was one of the big illusional mantras. You'd come hear this rumor. This summer, the Institute is giving us our land. And I remember Murph Goldberger, who was a great friend of many of us and who was also a trustee of the Institute, came by and said, I've talked to R.O. Anderson. He's going to give us our land. So that's fine. And then R.O. Anderson came to the trustees meeting and talked about trickle-down agriculture. There was no mention whatever of giving us our land. And then Anderson got into a fight with the city. They wanted to make, the Institute wanted to make what in retrospect were really minimalesque improvements. I think they wanted some rooms in their thing over there. I mean, you look back on it, it was an absurdly small change compared to what's happened. And the Institute, the city took a very hard-nosed attitude. They said, no, you can't make any changes. This is all historical. Herbert Bayard designed all this. We can't have any change. Nothing can happen here. So R.O. Anderson really got angry. And he decided that he would sell the place. So he found the man who was certainly the worst possible person to buy it, namely Hans Contrup, who allegedly owned property, a lot of property at the base of Aspen Mountain, who had no interest whatever in any of the cultural aspects of any of this, and sold it to Contrup. And of course, he sold us. We were sold lock, stock, and barrel to Contrup, and we had no idea, what this meant, except that Contrup couldn't pay the bill, so he had to forfeit the thing, and it went back to the Institute. And then there was some thought they would sell it to the University of Colorado. That didn't work. And they sold it allegedly. They allegedly sold it to a man called Muhammad Hadid. And I'm quite certain from things I observed that it wasn't Hadid who put up the money. He had I think a Saudi consortium behind him, and he was just fronting for the Saudis. And I will never forget the first time that we met the Hadid people, because Peter was president, I was vice president, and George was, of course, involved. So the three of us would attend these various meetings. The first meeting we attended, Hadid people came, and they came. There was this lawyer, a friend of mine, so I can't remember his name, who's now the head of the hospital board. His name slips me for the moment. Nice guy. As I say, we've become good friends. Turned out he actually studied Arabic in college, so he had a leg up here. And he came to this meeting with this book. And the book was entitled The Aspen Idea. And he said to us, I didn't understand what this was all about until I read this book. Oh, that's good. And I may add that all the representatives of all the nonprofits were there, and the city. The mayor was there, and the music people were there, and the design people were there, and we were there. And we read this book, it's the Aspen Ideal and so forth. And then he produced this plan for developing the meadows. And you didn't know whether to laugh or cry. There were like 8-story buildings in the middle of the meadows. This is part of the Aspen Idea. And it was a horror show. You could not believe this thing. So we went out. Peter and I and George went out, and I think we had a good stiff drink. And he said, something got to happen here. What happened is that the city got its act together, and I don't remember exactly the order in which this worked out, and declared that nothing was going to be developed out here, which was not agreed to by all parties. When I heard this, I immediately realized that we have here going the tyranny of the weak, because all we have to do is not agree to stuff, and nothing's going to happen here. The Institute is desperate for stuff to happen. This gives us a leg up here. And I conveyed this to George and to Peter and whatever. And we went to one meeting, and I remember extremely clearly, I'll never forget this. Gideon Kaufman was the lawyer representing the Institute. Now the deal was this. everybody had to get something out of this. And we wanted our land. The Institute wanted of course, it had its land, but it wanted the capacity to develop. Music wanted its land. The design conference, I think, just wanted its 2 weeks. So everybody had to get something out of this. And Hadid wanted to build houses. So that was the thing. So they came in with this plan that was worked out, whereby we would get our land, except that Hadid's houses would be in our front yard. And there were these giant houses that were going to be really in our front yard, truth by Jowl. So we looked at this and said, no way. No way. At this point, Gideon really browbeat me. He really beat on me. And I said, fine, good morning, it's been nice knowing you, and walked up and left. And George left and Peter left. And we walked out, and I said, tee-hee-hee. Let them stew in there because they can't do anything unless we agree. And we're not going to agree to this. So anyway, there was a lot of compromising done. And so now there are these fancy houses on the racetrack, which have kind of spoiled the racetrack. But I think the compromise worked out pretty well for all of us. Basically, the people who weren't here at the time don't know there was a racetrack. And we have our front yard and we have our land. And Hadid had his houses. I think he's been bought out now. The Institute has its thing, and there we are. George and Cohen and whatever had the idea in the beginning that this should not be a seminar place, that people should come here and do their work. And I think what's kept it going is that we still have that objective. People, I think, do come here and do their work. I now know so few of the young people. The generations in our field, as you know, turn over very quickly. And I look at most of the people there, and I have no idea who they are, but I think they're working. I don't know. I think they're enjoying themselves and working. And you know, people who've been here say good things about us. Other people want to come, and I gather we're oversubscribed. And so I think it'll function for a long time, unless the National Science Foundation goes out of business. I think we'll go for a long time.